Welcome back to Reading with Mo, and today we are going to be talking about the books that are going to be coming out in the spring of 2023. These are all books that are on my radar, and spring as of if you're living in California. If in your other parts of the world, I don't know. These are books that are going to be coming out in the month of April, May, and June. I think I'm going to start calling these, instead of like my most anticipated reads videos, I'm going to start calling these books that are on my radar, and I'm going to try and be a little bit more selective with the books that I choose, because last time I did this for technically like the winter books, I talked about way too many books. There's like 40 something books, and I want to make it realistic in that I can actually eventually get to reading all of these books. I was just like putting anything on the list that sounded vaguely interesting to me, and I feel like a lot of those books I ended up DNFing or just not enjoying as much as I hoped I was going to. So with all that being said, let's get into the books that are coming out this spring. And there are, I think, around 20-ish, somewhere in the 20s of how many I want to share with you guys today. So I think that's more reasonable that I can actually realistically get to the majority of these this year. So there are 9 books coming out in the month of April that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. What's really cool is some of these books are actually from authors that I have read previous works from them before. So I feel like I'm always more like excited about those because I already have a good idea that I like the author's writing, at least most of the time. So the first one is Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh, who I previously read The Water Cure from, which I enjoyed. And I read Blue Ticket, which I thought was just okay. So this will be my third Sophie McIntosh book, and I'm hoping that this one I will be on the side of enjoying. So this novel is being described as being centered on the real unsolved mystery of the 1951 mass poisoning of a French village. I'm not going to go too deep into the synopsises of all of these books because I do plan on reading them somewhat soon, especially the April books, so I don't want to possibly be spoiled for things when, writers kind of get a little bit overexcited, or marketing, or whoever's responsible for writing synopsis, sometimes they put too much info in there. The next book I'm really excited for, so this is actually the conclusion of a trilogy that I have been reading, and it is called Black Girls Must Have It All by Jane Allen. I read the previous 2 books in this trilogy and I really enjoyed it. It's a fiction novel. Like I said, this is the final installment, so you should have read the first 2 books, I'm assuming, before you going into this one. We, I believe, are still following our same main character, Tabitha, who we followed in the first 2 books previously. I can't really say too much about what's going to be in this book anyway, because it's the conclusion, so it's definitely going to be giving away some spoilers of things that happened in the previous 2 books. And I'm kind of feeling like I need to reread the first 2 because I don't really remember them that well, since it was like a year, I think, since the second one came out, and 2 years ago since the first one came out. I believe I listened to them on audiobook though, so I could always recheck those out from my library, and I don't remember them being super long. Then we have The Secret Diaries of Charles Ignatius Sancho by Patterson Joseph. This book is being described as for fans of Bridgerton. It's a lush, immersive tale of adventure, artistry, romance, and freedom set in 18th century London and inspired by a true story. So it takes place in the year 1746. And we are seeing that Georgian London is not a safe place for a young Black man who recently has escaped from slavery. Then we have Greek Lessons by Han Kang. This will be my, I think, 3rd book from Han Kang. I really enjoyed, I'm gonna blank on the name of it now. So Han Kang also wrote The Vegetarian, which I just thought was okay. I wasn't really hugely impressed by The Vegetarian, but I read Human Acts and I loved that book so much. It was a 5-star rating. So once again, another author who I've read 2 books from before, and I need to see how I'm feeling. So this is a book in translation, and in this one, it takes place in Seoul, and in a classroom, there's a young woman who watches her Greek language teacher at the blackboard. She tries to speak but has lost her voice. Her teacher finds himself drawn to the silent woman, for day by day he is losing his sight. So fingers crossed that this will also be another 3rd time's try for these authors, that I am really enjoying them. Then we have a mystery thriller by an author that I have not read from before, and that is Brendan Slocum. The title on this one is Symphony of Secrets. I have on my TBR another book by this author called The Violin Conspiracy, but I haven't gotten to that one yet. So I don't know if I'll maybe do that one first or this one. I haven't decided yet. But this is a psychological thriller, I think. We're following a professor who uncovers a shocking secret about the most famous American composer of all time, that his music was stolen from a young Black composer named Josephine Reed, and he is determined to uncover the truths and right the wrongs. And then we have another book that falls into the mystery, thriller, horror genre, but in the young adult category, and that is The Cherished by Patricia Ward. This book is being described as for fans of White Smoke, Hazelwood, and Wilder Girls. I've only read Wilder Girls from that list, so I'm hoping I like it because I liked that book. And this one is a hypnotizing horror thriller in the vein of Midsommar, as one girl inherits a mysterious house from her estranged grandmother and a letter with sinister instructions. Then we have a nonfiction book. This one is called The Art of Libromancy on Selling Books and Reading Books in the 21st Century, written by Josh Cook. I love any book that is about books, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. So of course I had to add this one to my radar list, and this is an essay collection. Works explores the politics, philosophies, technologies, emotional experience, and craft of selling books in the 21st century. Along the same vein of books about books, this next mystery thriller just sounds so interesting. So it's called The Last Word by Taylor Adams. And after posting a negative book review, a woman living in a remote location begins to wonder if the author is a little touchy or dangerous. In this, as described as a psychological suspense and terror, I think it's very fitting to have a book like this. I don't think I've read anything like this or even heard of a book like this where it's kind of like based off of, the mystery thriller is based around like someone leaving like a bad review about an author. So I think this will be really fun and interesting to read. And then the last book that is on my radar for new releases in the month of April is another nonfiction book, and it's called The Ugly History of Beautiful Things, Essays on Desire and Consumption by Katie Kelleher. In this book, Katie explores our obsession with gorgeous things, unveiling the fraught histories of makeup, flowers, perfume, silk, and other beautiful objects. I think this will be a fun history book to read about these things, and definitely things that I am interested in and I'm curious to learn a bit more about, things I might not know. So for the books that are coming out in the month of May, there are another 9 books that I wanted to share with you guys. The first one I mentioned before, which is Quiet Amnestra by Costanza Casati. I believe I mentioned this one in my winter TBR, but it's looking like it's getting pushed back until May. I forget what month originally it was supposed to be released in. This is a debut novel following Clytemnestra, one of the most notorious villainesses of the ancient world, and this is based off of Greek mythology, which I've been kind of dabbling in reading some fiction books centered around that topic, so this is one that was on my radar. Then we have Shy by Max Porter. This is described as a novel about guilt, rage, imagination, and boyhood, about being lost in the dark and learning you're not alone. I think the whole gist of this story is a few strange hours in the life of a troubled teenage boy. He's wandering into the night, listening to the voices in his head, his teachers, his parents, the people he has hurt, and the people who are trying to love him. I'm really interested to see how the author is able to, or what the author is able to accomplish in telling this story that takes place really only a few hours. And we have a nonfiction book that is Soil, the Story of a Black Mother's Garden by Camille T. Dungy. This is the story of poet and scholar Camille T. Dungy as she recounts the 7-year journey she went on to diversify her garden in the predominantly white community of Fort Collins, Colorado. I've been wanting to read a little bit more books or centered around the topic of nature to see how I enjoy them, so that's kind of what drew me to that one. And speaking of nature, it kind of flows with the next book, which is a fiction book I wanted to share with you guys, which is called The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This author has also written Cutting for Stone, but I haven't read that book, but I know that one is kind of one of those more well-known best-selling books. This is described as a story of love, faith, and medicine, and it's set in Kerala, South India, and it's following 3 generations of a family seeking the answers to a strange secret. I love a good multi-generational family saga, and that's why I'm hoping that this book is going to deliver for me. Then we have a mystery thriller debut novel, and this one's called The Niger Wife by Vanessa Walters. This is following the story of a young woman who goes missing in Lagos, Nigeria, and her estranged auntie who will stop at nothing to find the truth. And it's described as being for fans of My Sister the Serial Killer, which I haven't gotten to that one yet, and The Last Thing He Told Me. Then we have another mythology-centered retelling. The next one is Atalanta by Jennifer Saint, who has also written Electra and Ariadne. I have Electra on my shelves. I haven't gotten to that one yet. Ariadne, I can't remember now if I read that one. I would have to look it up. But this one is following a fierce huntress raised by bears and the only woman in the world's most famous band of heroes, the Argonauts. Next, we have a fantasy book, which I feel like I don't really put a lot of fantasy books on my radar, but this one sounded interesting and appealed to me. It's called The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. So no surprise there that this fantasy has something to do with books. We're following the story of two strangers who they find themselves connected by this mysterious, vast library that contains a lot of wonders and a lot of secrets. And this is the first book in a new series, so hopefully if I enjoy it, then I will be able to continue on with the rest of the series. I don't know if I'm going to really prioritize reading this book soon, just because it is the start of a series. If I enjoy it, I'm going to have to wait a whole year, and then I'm going to forget what happens and have to reread it again. So this is definitely a book, though, that I'm really hoping that I enjoy, because I would love to find another series to follow along with. Next up, we have The God of Good Looks by Brianne McIver. This is the author's debut novel and is following a young Trinidadian woman who is finding her voice and a new kind of happy ending. This one's described as for fans of Queenie and Bridget Jones' Diary. I read Queenie and I think I had enjoyed that one. Not as much as I'd hoped to, but I did enjoy it. And what's funny is Bridget Jones' Diary is on my TBR for this month. I don't think I'm going to get to it yet, but I will, I think, be carrying it over into the month of April. So I'm interested to see, once I read that and then read this book, like the comparison, if I feel like that's a true statement or not. And then the last book that's coming out in the month of May that's on my radar is Once More with Feeling by Elisa Sussman. Now, this is going to be rare for me because this is a romance book, and I don't put a lot of romances on my radar. It's just not a genre that I'm currently super into and like reading a lot of. Like, I don't mind romance in books. It's just romance centered books aren't really my thing or what I gravitate towards. But I read a Funny You Should Ask by this author. I think it came out last year, and while it wasn't like my favorite book of all time, I found it very interesting, easy to listen to, and because of that, I felt like I want to give this author another chance and see if I want to continue picking up their novels. So I feel like these books, I feel like this book and the one that Alyssa released last year kind of similar, where they kind of follow, or she likes to write books that follow celebrity storylines. So in this one, we're following a former pop star who finds herself back in the spotlight along with an old flame from her past, and this is a friends to lovers meets enemies to lovers story. Then last but not least, we have the books that are coming out in the month of June. So in the month of June, there are 8 books that I want to share with you guys. And I actually have one of them, which is kind of cool, an arc of one of them. So the first book I'm going to share with you guys is called Innards. It's a story collection by Magagodi Awamfela Makin. I hope I said that right. But yes, this is a debut short story collection. The stories are linked and they narrate the everyday lives of Soweto residents from the early years of apartheid to its dissolution and beyond. Find that with short story collections, I do enjoy ones that are kind of more interconnected than necessarily each one standalone. So I just naturally feel like I end up enjoying that type of short story collection. And we have another mystery thriller, and that is Killingly by Catherine Buettner. This book is based on the unsolved real life case or disappearance of a Mount Holyoke student in 1897. It's described as for fans of Donna Tartt and Sarah Waters. I love Donna Tartt, one of my favorite authors of all time. I haven't read anything by Sarah Waters, but maybe I should check out something of hers. Then we have The Memory of Animals by Claire Fuller. Tin House was nice enough to send me an ARC copy of this book. I actually just got it in the mail yesterday, but I don't feel like getting up and grabbing it, so I'll show you guys still the cover here along with all the other ones I've been showing you guys. I think this will be my third Claire Fuller book. This is the third author in this video alone that this will be like my third book from them that I will have read, and kind of similar to the other ones. Exactly. I really enjoyed one and the other one was just okay. Like, it didn't really do much for me. So I read Bitter Orange and I really enjoyed Claire's writing so much. And then I read Unsettled Ground, which I liked the writing still, but the story for me was a little bit lacking. Like, I didn't enjoy the story as much as I did the story in Bitter Orange. So I'm really curious to see how I'm gonna feel about The Memory of Animals. I'm hoping that I really love it. This book takes place set during a pandemic, and it's following an unprepared world as they scramble to escape the mysterious disease causing sensory damage, nerve loss, and in most cases death. And we're following a 27-year-old marine biologist, Neffy, who is disgraced and desperately indebted, and so she registers for an experimental vaccine trial in London. Then we have a novel by Isabel Allende, who, if you have watched any of my videos earlier this year, I have read, I think, 2 books so far, and this will be my third if I read this one, but I don't think I'm actually gonna prioritize this one because I have a few of her books on my shelves that I want to read first, but this one's still on my radar because I know I'm going to read it and it sounds really interesting. So I want to share it with you guys. This is a novel in translation. So Isabel Allende does really well with writing historical novels, and this one is no different. It takes place following the effects of war and immigration on one child in Europe in 1938 and another in the United States in 2019. I don't even need to know more about what's going to happen in this book. I already know I'm going to pick it up. Next, we have another fiction book, and that is Madalena and the Dark by Julia Fine. This one is set in 18th century Venice, and takes place at a prestigious music school. And we're following a story about 2 girls who are drawn to each other by a dangerous wager. The next book I'm going to share with you guys, you probably have already heard of if you are a mystery thriller reader who likes to keep up with like new releases and stuff, and that is the new Riley Sager book. I have read every book so far that Riley has published, and I will definitely be picking this one up. Some of them I enjoy more than others. I don't think any of them for me have been like the greatest ever, but I find them enjoyable and easy to listen to as audiobooks. This one is a gothic chiller. It's about a young caregiver assigned to work for a woman accused of a Lizzie Borden-like massacre decades earlier. So yeah, this one is a like very much priority book that I know for sure I'm going to be reading in the next few months, and I'm going to try and get on my library hold list for the audiobook like right away when they post it on there, so wish me luck. Actually, the last few books are mystery thrillers. So the next one is The Quiet Tenant by Clemence McCallan. This is a psychological thriller, and it's about a serial killer. It's narrated by those closest to him. So we have his 13-year-old daughter, his girlfriend, and the one victim he has spared. This gives me very much like sounding like that other book that I read that I really loved last year. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Okay, yes, this book is definitely giving me, from the synopsis, I don't know how it's actually gonna play out, vibes of Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka, which made my top 10 books of last year. So we'll see how well the author does with this, their own spin on this concept, where where the writer will tell the story of a serial killer or from the people that know him. I have high hopes. I'm hoping that's good because, you know, I just can't help but have high hopes because a book like this made my top 10 of last year. So it does have some kind of big shoes to fill. And then last but not least, we have a mystery thriller that's going to be released from another very well-known writer, and that is 0 Days by Ruth Ware. I know a lot of people as well are very much anticipating this book to be coming out. I believe I have read all of Ruth Ware's books. At least to the best of my knowledge, I have read all of Ruth Ware's books as well. This thriller is described as combining Mr. and Mrs. Smith with The Fugitive. It's about a woman in a race against time to clear her name and find her husband's murderer. I remember really enjoying The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware when it came out, but I don't, at least to the best of my knowledge, remember being like superly impressed with any other Ruth Ware books that I've read. But I feel like along a similar vein as Riley Sager, they're just kind of like easy to listen to audiobooks that I don't have a hard time with following along as I'm like doing other things. So those are all 26 books that are on my radar that are going to be coming out over the next 3 months. I think that it's pretty realistic that I can get to at least a good majority of these. Let me know which of these you guys want me to prioritize in my upcoming TBRs. And let me know if you guys have any other books that are coming out over the next 3 months that you're interested in that I haven't spoken about here, because there are so many books. There's a lot more I could have included on these lists, but I really just wanted to choose like the top ones I feel like I would prioritize and realistically get to in a timely manner. Because yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, putting like almost 50 of them on my last books I recommended to you guys that are coming out this year. If you like this type of video, definitely let me know so that it lets me know if you guys are interested, and I'll keep continuing to do these quarterly books that are on my radar. I will definitely continue doing them throughout the year and then kind of see how you guys feel about them. For me, like, I just love being able to know new books that are coming out, and I like to be on top of stuff like that. But if it's something that you guys want me to continue doing, please just let me know. And that's it for today. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.